Welcome everyone back to the Road Team Podcast, episode number 4. Today we're talking about everything CFL, and most importantly, the most important CFL team of all time, the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Let's get right into things. We're going to be going over a quick week 15 recap, even though that happened like a long time ago, like 4 days ago. And then we're going to be doing, our previews and a very important talk about the Hamilton Tiger Cats, the 4-9 Hamilton Tiger Cats, the greatest 4-9 team that's ever existed. So, without further ado, let's go quickly through what happened last week, because that's just what we do here. There were 3 games last week. One on Friday, 2 on Saturday. The first one was BC taking on Toronto in BC, and didn't go the way that I particularly wanted it to go. We needed for the Ticats, fumbling over my words right now. For the Ticats, we kind of needed the Argos to lose. The Argos did not lose. They certainly did not. This game, I think, was all Toronto pretty much the entire way. There was not very much life at pretty much any point in the game for BC. The story of this one was time of possession. And Toronto had the ball with full control of it for a lot of the first half. They just couldn't put the ball in the end zone at the beginning of the game, which kept BC around. They had 4 field goals. Liram Hailarahu was kind of in his bag a little bit and had them up 12 to 3, I think, at the start. We had a big return by Janarian Grant at the beginning. BC, the defense showed up big time, made some stops when Toronto got down the field. But other than that, it was all Toronto to start. Nathan Rourke was the starting quarterback. They wore their gray jerseys, their dark grays, and not the biggest fan of those jerseys, even though I love gray and orange. Like, those are like 2 of my favorite colors. But jerseys were The play on the field was worse, and the highlights video on the CFL YouTube channel was even worse, with circles and shenanigans going on. So, the game was 12-3. Toronto had control, and then right before halftime, Nathan Rourke, who was on my fantasy team. It was such a stupid decision to play him. Got a quick little rushing touchdown, made it 12-10, kind of reset the game a little bit. And then Toronto went right down the field. Big plays to Mackay Polk, and there goes the camera. Big plays to Mackay Polk, and Toronto took a 19-10 lead, and they would not relinquish momentum at any point for the remainder of the game. For some reason, BC decided, let's switch to Vernon Adams, which I would have been very fine with. I think I like Vernon Adams personally a little bit better than Nathan Rourke, but I understand riding with Nathan Rourke. He's you could argue he's a little bit more established. He is a very, very phenomenal player in this league. It also helps that he's Canadian too. And he was the hot hand coming into this game. So it makes sense to ride with Nathan Rourke. I'm not mad at that. I just think it makes no sense to take him out at halftime after not playing the best, but actually kind of building on something going into the half with a big touchdown. But BC puts in Vernon Adams. Vernon Adams didn't play so hot in this one. And Toronto just did what they needed to do. They had full control in the second half as well. Chad Kelly had a rushing touchdown late in the third. Added some more field goals and little Chase Bryce action at the end, and that was your game. It was a 33-17 victory for Toronto. Game number 2, the important game of the week. The Hamilton Tiger Cats taking on the Ottawa Red Blacks. And, this one, I don't want to spend that much time on the recap, but I am going to do it for this game because this game was a really fun game. We had an opening field goal drive. Bo Levi Mitchell, and the offense looked really good the whole time. Then we had Nick Usher with a huge forced fumble and a little quick recovery to keep points off the board. Ottawa would then go kick a field goal. It would be 3-3. And then Lawrence Woods with a huge 83-yard punt return for a touchdown to put the Ticats up 10-3. I've noticed that this year, like all 4 of the Ticats wins, it's been team efforts where you've gotten things out of the offense, defense, and special teams. Whenever you're able to get a spark like that from the special teams, it hasn't been the best unit this year. Huge, absolutely massive. The offense, like, didn't put together a ton at the beginning of the game. They were putting together there's some good drives that, there's the drive that resulted in a field goal. Bo Levi Mitchell also had another drive that got snuffed out by a Brandon Dandridge pick. But the offense wasn't completely awake. I think at the beginning of the game, just not able to finish drives off, and that punt return for a touchdown was massive. It's also something that I've missed. I think the Ticats have one of the weaker return games, if not the weakest return game in the CFL this year. Maybe outside of like BC, where Terry Williams really hasn't gotten it going, but everyone else is getting all these explosive returns. I want to see the team that has historically done pretty well in the return game get some returns. So that was big. Dustin Crum, towards the end of the second half, would try to come in for a little third and inches action and on short yardage. And the Ticats weren't having it. He got stuffed. Big time play there. Had a 14-16 lead, and then absolutely massive Steven Dunbar, 54 yards to the house. And we were rolling. We were rolling. The Ticats got up big. I think we were up 29-6 going into the third quarter. We had Jonathan Moxie with a big interception. We had Bo Levi Mitchell being cool, calm, and collective with Lorenzo Malden right in his face, finding Leatroy for a big 20-yard receiving touchdown. Greg Bell was running the rock very well this whole game. And it was just all Ticats. You had Brandon Barlow with a strip sack that Nick Usher would recover. Just defense playing lights out like a completely different unit. And 29-6 lead, which would lead Ottawa to bench Drew Brown at quarterback. But then Jeremiah Mazzoli would come into the game, a familiar face. I love Jeremiah Mazzoli, just down as a red-black. And would just light up soft coverage, went right down the field, scored a touchdown. Then went right down the field and did it again. Hit a 2-point conversion. And just like that, the 29-6 game, it turned into a 29-21 game. And as a Ticats fan, you've seen this happen like a billion times before. And it's just like, why does this keep happening? But this game was different because the Ticats, with 6 minutes to go, would handle business. The ball in the hands of the offense. After touchdowns by Andre Miller and Dominique Grimes for the Red Blacks, would go take over. 6 minutes to go. Would go right down the field on a nice little 3-minute drive. And we had some Leatroy passing action. They drew a pass interference call, offensive lineman pass interference call. That was pretty funny. And then we had it being capped off with a Greg Bell 15-yard rushing touchdown. And Dustin Talbot would seal the deal with a pick at the end of the game. Ticats win it 37-21 in the hammer, improving to 4-9 and keeping the playoff hopes alive. Massive, massive win. In terms of big stats, it was a Steven Dunbar game. 8 balls for 151 yards, including that big 54-yard ball. Tim White pretty silent with only 1 ball for 20 yards, but Dunbar picked up the slack there. He was the number 1 target. Shamar Bridges had a nice bounce-back game, caught 5 balls. In terms of the Ottawa side of things, Justin Hardy and Dominique Grimes both went over 100 yards. And back to Hamilton. Greg Bell, 99-yard rushing game. Dog. But Greg Bell is injured now, so that's unfortunate. Anyway, that was that game. Our other game, just to wrap up our recaps, because this is kind of like, not the most like current information. Montreal versus Calgary. I'm not going to spend too much time on this game because neither team wanted to win, and it was reflected in the final score being 19-19. Calgary got off to a very hot start. They were able to force Walter Fletcher to fumble deep into their own territory. They went down the field. They scored a touchdown. Marquis Michel getting in the end zone for the first time in a little bit. Hasn't really been too involved in the offense as of late, but good bounce-back game for him. James Letcher would fumble the following kickoff, and it would be batted out of bounds by a Calgary player, which I was not smart enough to type up who that was. So I'm sorry. I'll give you your marbles in the I just said marbles. What am I saying? I'll give you your credit, in the comment section when I do that. But Calgary, big play. They would go kick field goal. I don't know why I'm pointing fingers now. I'm just talking to myself. It's just funny, when you have a podcast, when you're just like talking into a mic, it's pretty funny. But I digress. We continue. Calgary would get up to a 10-0 lead, and then Montreal, huge blocked punt by former Ticat Sean Thomas Erlington, which would get called back for roughing the kicker, which I think it was a pretty bogus call, but that would keep Montreal off the scoreboard for the time being. They would go score a touchdown in the early second quarter. Cody Fajardo would call his own number, rushing touchdown to make it 10-7. Calgary would have a nice drive. They would fumble at the 2-yard line. Tommy Stevens, Mr. Reliable, not able to handle the snap, and Montreal took advantage of it. It's 10-7 game and a half. Both teams traded some field goals, and Calgary would have an opportunity at the end of the game, up 13-10, to put it away, or at least kick a field goal to make it a 6-point game. And they just completely fell apart. Penalties. I think there's a big holding penalty and some kind of unsportsmanlike penalty, which made the field goal attempt from Mr. Paredes 52 yards. And Rene Paredes would miss that field goal. And Montreal would go down the field, kick a field goal of their own. And we'd go to overtime, where neither team wanted to win this game. They both did nothing in overtime but kick field goals. 19-19, your final. That is your very, very interesting Week 15 recap. Now, on to the real stuff. Our topic. I actually went out of order. I said we were talking about Week 16 picks, and then we'll talk about the Ticats. No, we talk about the Ticats first, then we make our Week 16 picks. Don't let the Hamilton Tirecats get hot. This is really where this podcast begins, and this conversation is not going to go on that long. And is it a conversation because I'm talking to myself? Yeah, we'll call it a conversation. The Hamilton Tirecats have looked like a totally, completely different team since Chris Jones has taken over as the defensive assistant, basically defensive coordinator. This defensive unit has looked entirely different. It's the same faces pretty much, but he's bringing the best out of everyone. And this unit is talented. There's talent all across the defense. You have a line that has, I honestly think, like pretty solid pass rushers. You have Nick Usher. You have Brandon Barlow. You have Mr. David Menard. You have Hendricks. Like you have good players on this team. You have a secondary that I understand, like, you could pick apart a little bit, but Stavros Katsatonis, very solid player. Didn't play necessarily the best at the beginning of the year, but he's playing a whole lot better. Destin Talbert's playing a lot better. Jamal Peters is Jamal Peters. He's got 4 picks. He's doing his thing over there. Richard Leonard, Sunderland. You have good players, honestly, like. It's a good defense. I just said that. I think the defense is way better than how they were playing at the beginning of the year, and it's showing up. The Ticats defense legitimately played very, very well against Ottawa. They played very well against Toronto the week before, and they played very well against Winnipeg, the game that they lost, only giving up that big touchdown at the end of the game. Other than that, the defense has been really, really good. And it helps a ton. It helps the offense out a ton. Bo Levi Mitchell is looking like Bo Levi Mitchell. I wasn't a big fan of the trade when we traded for him, and I never really bought into the hype. But I'd say midway through the season this year, after the first win of the year against Toronto, not the first one, the second one of the year against Edmonton, he did throw for 5 touchdowns in that game. When he threw for 5 touchdowns in that game, he really won over my respect. And I've been backing him up the whole time. When Taylor Powell came in, I know Taylor Powell graded out very, very good, but to me, his play style just did not seem like it was going to translate to wins. And I understand that. But Levi Mitchell's play style didn't necessarily translate to wins in the meantime, but that makes any sense. But it's starting to now, But Levi Mitchell is playing very good. He does make some interesting decisions sometimes to throw the ball, but I think he's been making really good reads these last couple games. He is my quarterback, and I will proudly say that. I love having him at quarterback right now, even though he's not the most mobile person in the world. And he puts the ball in harm's way sometimes. He can make big-time throws, and you could hit the home run ball. And Ticats have a plethora of different players that could burn you at any given time, and you just got to get the ball in their hands. But Levi Mitchell is doing that, and now he has a good ground game. Greg Bell's been running the rock really well. It's not going to be Greg Bell, though, this next game. James Butler coming back from injury, and he will be the starting running back. But it's just everything's different about this team right now. The offense is clicking a little bit better. The defense is putting together stops and helping out the offense, and the special teams has looked a lot better as well. Mark Leggio has struggled a little bit in terms of the kicking-wise side of things, but the Ticats, they look like a different team. I definitely would say like Calgary looks like the worst team in the league, and you could argue from there, but I think the Ticats are playing better than a handful of teams in the league right now. I definitely think they're playing better football than what Saskatchewan's doing. I think Saskatchewan has a lot of really good talent. They just haven't put it together to wins, but I think they're playing better than Saskatchewan. I would take Hamilton over Winnipeg right now in a game. I would take Hamilton over Ottawa right now in a game. Toronto, I want to take them. And I mean, I'm pushing it with all these teams. I think Hamilton could beat BC right now. The only team that I just would not want to face, well, two teams. I wouldn't want to face Montreal, and I wouldn't want to face Edmonton. But overall wise, like, I feel like this is a team that at the beginning of the season looked just completely down in the dumps. By far, clearly the worst team in the league, and it's changing. The narrative is changing right now, and now you sit 4-9 with a chance to go in 3 games back of a crossover and 3 games back of the Toronto Argonauts. With 5 games left, the Ticats have a small chance of making the playoffs. And it starts with this week. Big game against Toronto. Huge game against Toronto coming up. The Ticats lead the season series 2-0. They had the big game, first one of the year, which they almost choked away, but first game of the year. First win of the year, not game. First win of the year was against Toronto in Toronto, and then you go and win one in the Hammer on Labor Day, and now you have a chance, go back to Toronto, and a team that I don't really know what direction they're trending in. They lost a tough game to Ottawa. They lost a tough game to the Ticats week before. They bounced back with a win on the road against BC, but I don't think Toronto really has an identity right now. It's going to come down to if Chad Kelly could play well or not. And if he does, Toronto will have a decent chance of winning the game. But Ticats defense can force some errors, and we will see. We will see. This is definitely a very, very winnable game. And in terms of who each team is missing, no Janarian and Grant, which will be pretty big on the Toronto side of things. On the Hamilton side of things, no Jonathan Moxey, no Greg Bell, and no Casey Sales. So some big names missing from Hamilton side of things, but I certainly think that you go win this game, you go pull within 2, and then we start having conversations from there, you know. But be careful. Be careful. Because the Hamilton Ticats are playing some good football right now. I think the league's kind of flipped upside down a little bit. And you have the Ticats, if they're able to win here, they'll go play BC in BC, and BC's, like, quarterback-wise, I don't know what they're doing. They still need to figure themselves out. And then after that, you play Winnipeg at home, and you know this Ticats team is going to want to play Winnipeg hard. Almost go into Winnipeg and win that game. They should have won that game. You get them again at home. I feel pretty good about that one. And then they have a bye. Then they have Calgary at home. And then they take on Ottawa on the road. So there's definitely, like, I don't know. It depends on playoff implications. Ottawa might have nothing to play for week 21. So we'll see there. Maybe they do. They might have to lock down a spot. But not the hardest schedule in the world in terms of you're not playing the teams that are red hot right now. down the stretch. Not that there really are that many teams that are red hot. Everything's been really confusing, I'd say, over the last couple weeks. The only thing that I know is Edmonton's playing good football, and Winnipeg's won a lot of games, but nothing's been insanely convincing other than they have a really good defense. So that's my random circular, and I don't want to call it circular, it's just all over the place. My random analysis that's all over the place. But you win this game against Toronto, you get within 2, and we can start having conversations about can this team be a playoff team. But for right now, beat Toronto. And that leads us into our picks for this week. Game number 1, kind of already did the recap for it, but it's going to be Hamilton versus Toronto, Friday, 7 o'clock in Toronto. Give me the Hamilton Tiger Cats in this one. I'm biased. This is a game the Tiger Cats can win, though. It's going to be really difficult. It's really difficult to sweep a in-division opponent, especially an in-division opponent as good and talented as Toronto. This isn't a scrub Toronto team from 3-4 years ago. This is a good Toronto Argonauts team, but not a great one. Certainly not the team that went to the Grey Cup. Certainly not the team last year that also made the playoffs and had MOP Chad Kelly. I'm not entirely impressed by every aspect of this team. Their secondary is a little pesky and gritty, and they do have a good secondary. Kadeem Carey is Kadeem Carey, and Chad Kelly's a solid player. He has options. I don't think the receiving core is that deep. It's Mekhi Polk's gotten going recently, but it's probably DeMonte Coxey and DeVaris Daniels and David Unger is your main threats of concern. I think the Ticats match up pretty well against them. And Coxey did eat us alive a couple weeks ago. I will say that. But I think the Ticats are gonna pull out this one. I think it's gonna take a good game from Greg Bell. Not Greg Bell. I meant to say James Butler. A good game from James Butler. Get the ground game going, and everything comes from there. So Hamilton Tiger Cats for game number 1. Game number 2, Saskatchewan at Calgary. Calgary sometimes remembers that they're a football team when they're at home. When they're playing at McMahon, they remember they know how to play football. Saskatchewan has not won a game in I don't know how long. It's been a while. They were 5-2, and now they're 5-7-1. It's been a very long time. I think Saskatchewan's gonna find a way to win this game, even though they keep finding ways to lose games / not win them. They're gonna find a way to win this game. I'm going Saskatchewan on the road, back-to-back road teams from the Road Team podcast. Game number 3, Montreal and Ottawa. I'm going to take Ottawa here. Montreal's been a little rocky. Still a phenomenal football team. Tyson Philpott has been announced out for the year, but they're getting people back. Keon Julian Grant had a solid first game back. Reggie White's back. Charleston Rambo. Still have a good offense. Defense is solid. But I do feel like Ottawa at home is going to bounce back from last week, and they're gonna go ahead and pull away with the win, just based off of how the teams are kind of trending. And I think Ottawa's just due for home win, take advantage of it at home. And then a massive, very important game, Winnipeg against Edmonton, because Winnipeg plays Edmonton, I think, back-to-back weeks. Give me the Edmonton Elks. Edmonton's hot. And I said it last week. Even though Winnipeg coming off a bye, and then they come off of beating Saskatchewan twice. They're on this massive win streak. I'm still not convinced in that offense by any means. Brady Oliveira, very, very solid rusher, but Zach Collaros has just not been Zach Collaros this year. And receiving core is a little iffy over there. Defense is good, but I don't think their offense is sustainable to keep playing the way they are. And I think Tyrell Ford is going to lose to his brother, Trey Ford. Elks are going to take care of business in Edmonton and win a massive game for them. And those are all the picks. So that is this episode of the Road Team podcast. Not the most interesting one because, I don't know. The recaps, in terms of my preparation for said recaps, wasn't as good as I think previous podcasts. And I wanted to put this episode out way earlier, but I just got behind on things. And we end up dropping it on a Thursday again. So it is what it is. But I appreciate anyone who decided to tune in and listen, because we don't have many listeners yet, and that's okay. It's perfectly okay. I'm having a conversation with myself. But if you guys are listening and this does make it to some person that's a human being, thank you for watching. I appreciate you. And we'll see you in the next episode when the Hamilton Tiger Cats are 5-9.